It delayed that go. I always hate it when people delay the go. It's fine.
Do I need to read? Are we desynced?
Are we desynced? Who knows? We'll be fine.
Okay.
Tune in and drop out live from the satellite of dreams, beaming directly into your eardrums. Our hosts talk about the games that persist in the hearts and minds of gamers everywhere. We have our hosts, the left door-brained Brogan and the right door-brained Murph. Today, we are going to explore the Stanley Parable and look at what exactly this parable is trying to communicate. Murph, how have you been today?
My goodness, is it 4:30? I'm supposed to be having a back, sack, and crack.
Oh my god.
That's a Stanley Parable reference, Brogan.
Yes. That, with the choices, right? I forget which one that is. Was that the choice video? My favorite video is the one where they do like a Windows Movie Maker thing for you getting the collectible.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good.
That's a classic. Anyways, but we're not talking about that just yet.
No. I'm gonna be talking about Zoo Tycoon 2.
Oh, a much better game. No, I'm just kidding. Tell me about Zoo Tycoon 2.
Well, I decided with everyone talking about Silk Song right now, it would be the funniest time for me to move past Act 2 in Baldur's Gate 3. And then I did like 2 hours of that, and then I switched over to playing Zoo Tycoon 2.
There you go. How do you like it, Baldur's Gate 3, though?
I enjoy. I have some takes. I'm waiting to get to the end before I actually talk about it on the pod.
You're gonna let that simmer. Okay.
I'm trying to find what unique take I can give that no other man has given.
Maybe something to do with Dragon Age or some shit. Who knows? But that being said, Zoo Tycoon 2 is a masterpiece unto itself.
Yes. This is like, man, I put so many hours into playing Zoo Tycoon 2 back in the day, which is surprising because I never really liked Zoo Tycoon 1. I found it a little demanding, I guess. Zoo Tycoon 2 is very streamlined, and I went back to Zoo Tycoon 2 rather than finding some new zoo management game, because in my mind there's not a lot of games that does like the sort of streamlined factor that Zoo Tycoon 2 has. Like, Planet Zoo exists, and people will tell you to play Planet Zoo, but Planet Zoo asks a lot from the player because of how free form it is. Have you played any like zoo management or park games, specifically those from Frontier?
I don't necessarily know who they were by or whatever, but I have played a zoo game before. Yes, okay. Especially if you count Viva Pinata, the greatest game of all time.
Okay. So like in Planet Zoo, Planet Coaster, you can make your own like structures from the ground up. The game has like an extensive parts menu, and then you can cobble together your own custom fences, your own custom like gift shops, all that, and it's really precise and fiddly, and if you don't have like the patience or imagination for that, the game just doesn't fulfill the zoo fantasy, I guess.
Okay.
And so I went back to Zoo Tycoon 2, which is just, it's easy. You make an exhibit, you click on the animal, you get a helpful little box that shows you what sort of terrain the animal likes, what sort of food you can feed it, what toys to give it, and you can plonk all that down, and then you can move immediately on to the next exhibit. I don't like really spending a lot of time like fine-tuning and creating the perfect like mise-en-scène. A lot of my zoos are very flat. I don't really do anything interesting with the terrain, but I like that Zoo Tycoon 2 gives me the capacity to make like themed areas. It has a lot of themed like buildings and benches and drinking fountains and such, where you can be like, this is the tundra area, this is the swamp area, this is the jungle area, you know? And then you add on the expansion packs they did, one adding a whole bunch of like endangered animals and things to do with conservation, then Marine Mania, where you can just like make full-on aquariums and do, well, okay, this is problematic now, but you can do like dolphin shows and things like that.
Yeah, SeaWorld shit.
Yeah, SeaWorld
nightmare
stuff.
Yeah.
But that also blends in beautifully with the original zoo stuff. Like, now you can make a water tank for your polar bear to swim in, and make a sort of underground section that the guests can watch the polar bear swim in. And then the dinosaur one added like a whole bunch of new mechanics, from diagnosing animals like diseases and finding out like things in the park they're allergic with. You have to like assemble fossils and do a DNA DDR game to get your dinosaurs to life. It just like, it's just a good dopamine drip for me. And I was wondering, how it is with older games. Has there been like new advancements in Zoo Tycoon 2 technology in the form of modding? I was really big on the modding scene back in the day, to the point where I, in my arrogance as like a 12-year-old boy, like went on and said, I'm putting together a team for a mod pack I have an idea for. I won't do any of the actual modding. I'll do the research on what animals.
You're the idea guy.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
And that post wound up being it was on the Zoo Tycoon volcano, which was a popular forum back in the day. But that post wound up being used an example from one of the moderators saying, no more people, like, no more idea guys. If you're looking to, like, build a mod pack, you need to have modding experience.
Yeah. Ouch. They called your shit out.
I know. I was like, do you know I'm just a little guy? Do you know I'm just a little boy? I don't know better. I didn't say that, so but I felt it. So there's less mods than you'd think, especially since a lot have been lost to file sharing websites. But there's enough if you're looking for a refresher, especially since the fact that Zoo Tycoon 2 is like full-on abandonware now. Like, straight up on the mod Nexus page for Zoo Tycoon 2, there are people that are like, if you need a fresh install, just like take this download. Like, they're just openly pirating it.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, it kind of doesn't matter, yeah.
Yeah. But there are some packs, like there's some that'll add in animals that didn't make it over from Zoo Tycoon 1 to 2, and that's hilarious because the Marine Mania pack for 1, like, included some really unethical choices like humpback whales.
Oh, but it's not a real humpback whale.
No,
it's just an imaginary humpback whale.
But it's hilarious. Especially because they try to make them to scale.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's the funny factor. You can also get giant squid. But there's also some people that put together like a full-on like cryptozoology mythical animals pack, and I got in on that. Back in the day, there were some people that did those, but not like a full high-quality pack like this. So you can get your Bigfoots, your Loch Ness monsters, but they have some nice like niche ones like Tsuchinitsu, the fat snake from Japan, or they have some movie monsters. You can get gremlins, you can get graboids from Tremors. There's a Godzilla.
Ooh.
So the part of me that loves the part of me that loves doing themed sections of my zoo is like, ooh, now I can have like the spooky forest in the middle, where you can view animals not yet confirmed by science.
See, we've never talked about this, but this is my favorite part of a simulator is scenarios. Do they have like scenarios up in this?
So the mod packs, your mileage may vary. Some people go out of their way to make a scenario pack. Back in the day when I was a child, I didn't believe in scenarios. I didn't like the challenge. I wanted the sandbox. I especially since in Zoo Tycoon 2, everything costs money, from like dropping paths to building fences and stuff like that. I just wanted free reign to make the zoo of my dreams. But as an adult, I see the beauty of the challenge mode and the campaign mode, where being given like pre-built zoos and having to do like specific challenges, like you need to have like one of the packs has, you really need to get people interested in the secretary bird, and you mark that by how many secretary bird animal hats you're selling. And so you need to like make that the most important like centerpiece of the zoo, because you can't really control like the park guests' wants, But if you just force them to only view one exhibit and put you put all the bathrooms next to that exhibit, you put the restaurants next to that exhibit, they will invariably start going to look at the secretary bird, and then they'll think, because of your beautiful mind manipulation, I kind of want a secretary bird hat now.
Okay, all right, I like this.
But then there's also, I always like the photo challenges. One of the things that makes Zoo Tycoon 2 so special, and no other zoo game kind of does, is that you can just press a button and you turn into a zookeeper in your own park. Which means you can go around, you can pick up rubbish, you can scrub the animals, which is helpful.
It really makes you feel like a zookeeper.
Yeah, because sometimes your staff is dumb as shit. And they're like, I can't get to the dodo poop. And it's like, it's right there, man. It's right the fuck there. It's not blocked off. And you can just go in there and do it yourself, you know?
That's good.
But you can also bust out a camera and take pictures of your animals. And sometimes you'll get, photo challenges. Take a picture of these two gorillas grooming each other. Or things like that. I always like those challenges best.
Yeah. Why has this gotten, an HD re-release or any ports like that?
No. So there's a mod pack from, I'm going to say 2010, which I never knew about, which people went in and did a full-on HD-ification of Zoo Tycoon 2. They remade, I think it's 90% of the animals and assets and gave them HD textures. It looks like a completely different game. I kind of prefer Zoo Tycoon 2 being cartoony. That's how I can get away with doing wacky shit like humpback whale exhibit next to the Godzilla exhibit, you know?
Yeah.
But no, it's kind of lost to time. They did a Zoo Tycoon 3/World thing that was exclusive to the 360. Or no, I think it was the Xbox One.
This is the one I primarily played, by the way. That HD one.
Okay. Yeah, and people didn't really, glom onto that because it was very limited. And yeah, I kind of wish it would come back in some capacity because I think it does fill a role I don't see filled in the current market of zoo simulator type games. You either have something like Let's Build a Zoo, which is it's a goofy cartoony game and it's got a pixel art style, but you give your animals trampolines to bounce on and things like that. Or you're doing gene splicing. Or on the other end of the spectrum, you have Planet Zoo, which is so bogged down in the architecture and realism that it just asks a lot of the player. This Zoo Tycoon 2 fills a very happy middle ground, and I would honestly recommend it to any modern gamers that want to revisit it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But let me ask you, I have a question real quick. Are there any mascots in Zoo Tycoon?
So, okay, you took my segue. Yeah, the Extinct Animals expansion added in entertainers. You can get a man in a purple saber-toothed cat outfit, or you can get a man in a Brachiosaurus outfit, and they'll go around to the guests and beatbox to entertain them.
That's so fun. That sounds promising, but I would rather play Promise Mascot Agency.
This is one of those sleeper hits of this year, I feel like. I know a few people that have played this and they're oh, this is secretly one of the best releases of the year, but you gotta love it.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily about best releases of the year. It might make it probably does make top 10, probably scrapes near top 5. It feels a little cheap, but it's okay because it works out. It is by the people that made Paradise Killer, which I really enjoyed. I loved Paradise Killer. The game is you are a former Yakuza, and after a mission gone wrong, you are in exile on an offbeat rural Japan island, a small town that's basically an island. And
okay, this is the plot of Yakuza 6.
Yes, and your task is to take this former love hotel and turn it into, or bring up the Mascot agency. And what I mean by that is this is a world like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but instead of cartoon characters, mascots are real. Mascots are true characters. And so they want to go out, they want to help people, they want to basically, go to events. So you are an event coordinator, you try to enlist and hire mascots around the map, and then once you've hired them, you are trying to work them at different gigs, and the gigs, progress and escalate as the game goes on. You're trying to collect as much money as you can, give the mascots as less money as you can. This is a capitalism game. And also not overwork them. And, you have different things like, when you hire them, you have to promise them certain things on, like, basically sign-in stuff. Like, either give them a sign-in bonus, give them, mandatory raises after so many gigs, different things, or like paid vacation, stuff like that, where you have to look and be like, is this person really worth it? Or is this mascot really worth it? That's really fun. And then the actual meat and potatoes gameplay that's not a spreadsheet is exploring the island in this like little van or like truck with your mascot for the Mascot agency, like your secretary, which is like a toenail that you can color in different toenail colors. The mascots in this are definitely like, they're meant to be offbeat and like weird in like a bad way, but it's like intentional and good, like a toenail. Okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So it works out. I really like the game. I think the writing is really sharp. The actual spreadsheet gameplay is really fun. And then exploring the town really scratches the itch, because there's a lot of small collectibles as you're driving to basically help your business out. And like once every day you have to basically, first of all, pay a Yakuza debt, and then you also have to pay management operating costs. So you're doing a lot of like juggling and all the while enjoying like a free open world. While you're trying to go to other businesses and be like, hey, do you have an event coming up? We could bring a mascot here for this. Or there's like Persona Confidant level stuff where you're trying to level up certain routes, I guess, or quests, because you get further rewards on that, or different items will give boosts to different characters. It all works out. It's all really, really fun. I would highly recommend this game.
No, this is a much higher concept than I think I gleaned from like just glancing at the Steam page for this.
Yes. It's more than you think it is.
The comparison I've heard the most when it comes to the open world aspect of this game is a lot of people are saying like, oh, it's Deadly Premonition if it was a management game.
Is your primary exposure Cal? But yes, well, a little bit. It is a sort of empty sandbox in a decent way that's still really fun to navigate, because even though the truck controls are janky, they're not janky in a way that's off-putting. They're more so janky in a way where you really start to like the game. Let me give you an example here. Recently, I think semi-recently, in the past few months, there was a patch update. And the patch update's biggest feature was grinding on rails with your truck. So, like...
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So it's meant to be goofy. It's meant to be fun. You're going to flip over and you're going to giggle. And then you're going to flip back over. And, it's one of those things. Honestly, it probably does, now that I say that, it probably does drive like the Warthog.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I can see that.
It's not bad. It's just an acquired taste of a drive. And honestly, the game is really, really charming. All of the things are very inviting. So it's really hard to complain about this game. I put a lot of hours into it.
Okay. You think you're gonna like stick with it?
I fell off of it because it's definitely to me the way it is it's a one more turn, one more day type thing. And then at some point in time, like, I just dropped it, so I didn't feel compelled to do it again. However, I could tell by my point in time that I was nearing the end of the game. So before the end of the year, I will probably pick it back up one more time and run through it and see how it goes.
Okay. I mean, if you're not going to stick with it, you can stick it to the Stickman.
Oh, tell me about sticking it to the Stickman.
This is a beat-em-up roguelike game. That is how I would describe it. I would describe it first as this is a wacky type game. This game's a little funny. It's a little kooky, you know?
Yeah.
This is from the Free Lives, the devs that did Broforce. And I love Broforce.
Yes.
And I played this at PAX like some number of years ago, and it's been on itch for a bit. It was a Game Jam game, and this is like the full release. It's still in early access and still like tells you up front that it's in early access. So the core gameplay loop I like. It's everything around it that I kind of hate in this game. The core gameplay loop is that you are a stick figure in an office building and you start fighting your way to the top so you can become the CEO. And how the combat works is it's kind of a deck builder where you only have one button for attacking, and that attack will cycle through at the start 3 attacks you have, and then as you progress through the building you pick up extra attacks or you upgrade them. Every card can be upgraded 3 times to sort of do different effects. And so it's kind of like there's a wee bit of strategy in there where, especially if you get like sort of variance with your build, where it's like, oh, I have an uppercut followed by drinking coffee, which gives me a speed boost, and then I move on to doing like Chun-Li's spinning bird kick. Okay?
There you go. Okay.
And that's sort of like the thought process, and you start to like build on that. I guess my issue is, as I've played, let me see here, I've got 10 hours in this game. Which I feel like is a lot. I've seen the credits. And, like, after a while, it kind of came to me that, like, all I really need to do is just keep mashing the attack button. Like, I don't feel a sense of strategy, nor do I think it's the devs' intent to get strategy. I think the intent is to be a wacky, chaotic, stick figure fighting game. You know?
Sure.
Especially since there are a lot of instances where the game just kind of dicks you over, where it'll be like, here's a boss enemy, and that boss spawns like 20 minions, and the minions, what their attack is that they cling to you and slow you down, to the point that you can't even move, because the game has collision physics. So the boss just keeps whopping you, and you die.
That's not good.
But you can kind of, like, the jank, the chaos goes both ways, because some bosses, a lot of bosses, you can kill outright just by knocking them out of a window. And things like that. Or once you unlock guns are a one-hit kill. They just need ammo. Okay. So, you know, there's like a lot of different sort of options. There's different character builds you can start with that range from, like, this is a construction worker, this is an anime fan, this is a yoga guy, and they all have different sort of cards that they can collect. And then there's, like, the midnight shift, which changes things up. Now you're playing as supernatural entities fighting ghosts in the office building. There's additional game modes you can do that you unlock, such as parcel delivery, which is like a platformer. It becomes Super Meat Boy, still using this sort of like card-based system. There's a fight club, which works like Pokemon. Like, there's a lot of feature scope, I guess, and I should say. Like, and I would call it like
scope creep.
Scope creep, that's the term. Yeah.
Sure.
Especially since this is all also set in like a GTA style overworld that there's nothing to do in. But there's like a whole mission you have to do about how to learn how to drive. And you never really need to drive anywhere because the map is pretty small.
Okay.
So when it comes to my issues with the game, I just don't find it funny. Like, it has one joke, and it stretches that joke out, and the joke is late-stage capitalism. Like, and it would be one thing if it had good vocal performances. The game does have voice acting. I don't think it needs voice acting. I think it could have gotten away with just doing text boxes or, like, funny mumble speak. But instead it has voice acting, and every voice is, like, such a, I'm doing a voice type voice acting. Like, give me your best, like, I'm the boss of this company voice.
Parker, give me pictures of Spider-Man. I sound like a pig.
Yeah, there you go. And that's, you've experienced 70% of the voice acting in this game.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. There's this little, like, Clippy parody that I hate, which is, like, this thumbs up character that talks to you, and it talks like this. And it's, like, the main character that interacts with you, to the point that if you try to quit the game, it jump scares you, saying, you can't quit, you're fired. It's a lot, and this also leads into the game having really bad onboarding, because it takes a while for the game to actually, like, tell you what it's about. Instead, you're just, like, kind of going through vignettes about trying to get a job, you can't get a job, you kill your friend to get a job, and now you're working at the job. And you have to, like, fail a few times before you actually get to the, like, core gameplay loop. This all said, the game is only $5, and I think for $5 you do get, like, a sizable amount of content. And it is, like, a good game to just pick up and do, like, 10 minutes of play in, and then set it down. I played this game, like, primarily on a couple of long flights I was doing, and it was a fine, like, mindless way to kill time. And I think the framework is there. I think the devs just need to rein themselves back and focus on the part of the game that's actually, like, fun. Because anything outside of doing, like, the beat-em-up roguelike mode really feels like bloat in this game. It's not peak, is what I'm saying.
Peak is, I think
it's
someone,
the
I think Tucker is calling them friend slop.
I've seen people use the term friend slop because, we have this game. Last year was Lethal Company. Year before that was, like, Among Us. Games you play with your friends.
Or Fall Guys, where it's very clearly just a flavor of the month because everyone's playing it. And this does not escape that genre label.
Okay.
It is basically you're going to climb a mountain. And then there's multiple mountains to climb within a single journey. And you have different tools, and there's, like, physics to it. And you have, like, a climbing stamina bar as you're climbing. So you have to basically plan your route. And the other big thing is the mountain generation changes every 24 hours. So once you're done with... What?
Are, like, all active players at any given time climbing the same mountain? Or is it
not
only,
all
like...
at once, but it is the same mountain, yes.
Okay, I see. So it's like map rotation in Splatoon.
Yes, a little bit. Yeah, it'll rotate to whatever the new one is. And sometimes there's shit ones, sometimes there's good ones. This is definitely one where you want friends because even when your stamina bar goes, like, all the way to, like, the very little inch, instead of, like, Breath of the Wild where you're, like, making that last jump, you still have that last jump, but what you really want to do is have a friend who's already made it up, and if they extend their arm, they grab you as you're making the jump. So, and then that's really forgiving. So it really wants you to play with other people. And then there's, like, a hunger bar, there's, like, an exhaustion bar, and there's also weight. So if you have, like, a backpack, normally you can only hold, like, 3 things. And then if you have a backpack, you can hold 4 things, but anything you put in your backpack will be extra weight, which is not good for your stamina bar. So it's a very delicate, like, balance. And then there's, like, goofy items, like a cannon, to where, like, if you set the cannon down, you can literally get in it, and it's going to shoot you out. That's super fun. It's fun for right now.
what I'm hearing with all of, it's about navigation. You have different gizmos that can help you across difficult sections of the terrain. It's about relying on other people. I'm hearing that this is a Strand type game.
I don't even know what that means, Murph.
I don't think Kojima still knows what a Strand type game is.
Damn. No, yeah. You're not wandering. It's very clear, like, oh, there's a fucking mountain here. But, like, the sort of delicate, like, there is a bit of moving around. Your dude looks weird moving. And you're sort of managing and thinking about how you move, yes.
But does it, like, I don't know, this gets into a wider conversation topic, but, like, I've taken issue in recent months of the overuse of the word slop to mean flavor of the week I don't like.
Sure.
Does it feel sloppish? Like, does it feel that the only thing keeping this afloat is, like, the streamer presence and the fact that you and your friends can have a wacky knockdown time in it?
This is a very broad topic.
Yes.
A little bit of yes. I would say mostly yes. Let me ask you a question. I was thinking of it when you were talking about the stick stuff. Do you feel like a lot of do you feel like stick figures or blobs, like Amogus, do you feel like they are, because they don't have an art direction, that they feel generic? Or do you feel like it's more of they're meant to placeholder and just serve the experience for the player?
I think that's something really only the developer could answer outright. Because the thing with Among Us, with Lethal Company, with Fall Guys, and now with Peak, is that the characters are really easy to draw. And that means it's real easy for people to build a fandom around it.
Or you can mod it. It's very easy to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, for the longest time, there was a fucking meme that was just calling out objects that look like Among Us characters.
Yeah.
That keeps it in the zeitgeist. That keeps it in the brain. And from my understanding, Peak is kind of like Goat Simulator, where the developers didn't really intend it to, like, it was just like sort of a goofy game they put together. They didn't expect it to take off like it did. And the developers...
I guess that's the big thing, is if you regard slop as something meant to be shallow and meant to go for everybody, I don't think this is actually a good genre label. Because I don't think Friend Slop is real in that case. I think what happens is a small team is like, I want to make a fun party game that, a certain section of people will like. And then the party game gets big because it's a party game. And maybe it transforms into slop as things are, progressing, and they have to... Fall Guys has to do season passes. Like, I get it, but not necessarily like in Inception, I guess. I don't know. It's a complicated question.
Yeah, I just feel like calling a game like this Friend Slop would be like if I called, like, my corner store pizzeria where I meet up with my friends before we do Dungeons and Dragons.
Cheese slop.
That's the pizza slop place. Because it's only fun because I'm there with my friends.
Yeah, and would we have called Left 4 Dead Friend Slop?
Exactly. Exactly broken.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're putting down.
Yeah.
It's definitely this goes back to the Metroidvania thing of it is a genre label based on taste. And because of that, it's probably not good.
And it's only defined by its most prominent examples.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I mean, also, if you're basing an entire genre on how popular it is, that's also a bad sign. Either way, though, it feels pretty bleak.
Yeah. Do you know what Peak is backwards?
There you go. Did you have one better before that?
I was gonna say, like, well, it's no Peakest Keep.
That's a good one too. I think those both go together. What is Bleakest Keep?
Bleakest Keep.
It's such a generic name to me.
Yeah, this is the newest game from the dev who made Slay the Minotaur.
Oh, there you go. So you're excited.
Yeah, I was, like, reasonably excited because Slay the Minotaur did have a kind of spell over me, even though it was jank and really difficult. It won one of the Golden Dreams of 2024. It also, additional trivia, the winner of my game of the year, Another Crab's Treasure, was developed by Aggro Crab, whose next game was Peak.
There you go.
So, Bleakest Keep, it's different, and it's also the same to Slay the Minotaur in a lot of ways. It's still a roguelike. It still has the very low res, like, sort of, not even PS1, it's like early 3D graphics on a computer game through a CRT filter type aesthetic. Like, the combat is much the same. It's, but it doesn't have the Minotaur aspect. You're not in a large open level, building up your arsenal with the intent of fighting this one boss who is active in the level hunting you. Instead, this is a much more straightforward game of levels. You are a knight, and you're trying to get to the top of the Bleakest Keep to slay a wizard. And there are 4 levels, and each level you can find chests that will drop upgrades for you. What you're primarily picking up is actually ranged weapons. The game has a big focus on ranged combat. So you start with a bow, but right out of the gate, you can pick up like a carbine or a break action shotgun, or you can throw frying pans or throwing axes. There's actually a surprising amount of like variance there. But all the weapons function on a durability meter. And it's not actually based on how much you use the weapon, it's how much damage you take when you have it. And if the weapon breaks, it breaks down into parts, and you can use that to craft new weapons at the merchant.
Okay.
What's hard to describe about Bleakest Keep, and it's sort of the same thing that's hard about describe about Slay the Minotaur, is like, I shouldn't like it because it does frustrate me, but I also can't stop playing it. And this is how I know that I really didn't like Stick It to the Stick Man, because the moment like this came up and this became my pick up and play game, instead of like playing it for 10 minutes, I've been playing this for like 2 hours at a time.
I see.
And I still haven't beat it. And if you like play it, it feels incredibly straightforward. You're just slashing a lot of the same zombies. There are some. It does have like some RNG elements where the layout of the dungeons will always be the same, but there are certain points where certain like special enemies may spawn, like a werewolf, a banshee, or like a Nosferatu, or something like that. And that's a roll of the dice each time. What people may find challenging about Bleakest Keep is you can't upgrade your melee weapon in any way. There's a lot of different projectile weapons to pick up, but you're going to be stuck with the sword, and while you can upgrade your movement speed, the rate your special attack refills, how much ammo you can fit in your gun, you can't upgrade your damage or your health in any meaningful way. The issue is that even though ranged weapons deal a ton of damage, this game has a parry function, and it's a very forgiving parry, both in timing and in that you take no damage when it happens. So you can actually solve a lot of the enemy's movesets just by, like, it feels like the game is meant to be Resident Evil with the ranged combat, but actually it's Sekiro.
Okay.
Like, the first boss is a pain in the ass if you try to fight him normal. the way I've beaten him every time since getting past the first level is I run up in his face, and that will force him to do melee moves, and I just parry those and slash him like 3 times in the gaps in between. And it does get into sort of this hypnotic rhythm of parry, attack, attack, a parry, parry, attack, attack, which, from outside looking in, does not look fun or engaging game design. And that's how it is with a lot of the elite enemies as well, is once you learn the parry timing, you can kind of just slaughter them. But at the same time, I can't stop playing this game. And I think a lot of that comes down to the aesthetic, not just how the game looks, but how like, gooey and crunchy it is. This game has limb dismemberment. Like, if you shoot a zombie in the leg, its leg will explode, and now it's on the ground. You can do the same. You can blow off limbs. You can blow up heads. There's a lot of perks that will reward you for getting headshots. So it just feels good to attack things. And the parry itself has this very satisfying, like, clang sound when you get it off. It's also, probably, like, the most mimetic and high, like, upfront part of the game is that it does have a busty shopkeep.
Ooh.
And she has a ton of different poses, and every time she moves, those big bangers move around at, like, all the frames per second a growing boy needs.
Okay.
The game's just charming, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, outside of the game...
How much of that charm... I love what you're saying sounds like Slay the Minotaur. Especially you being addicted to it, especially Big Titty, Shopkeep. How much of this is new?
I would say number one, the parry is much easier. I never did the parry in Slay the Minotaur because the timing was really tight. The parry in this is much more forgiving. And also, I guess a lot of the ways in the progression, Slay the Minotaur would have a lot more focus, I guess, on stats to a certain degree, because a lot of the gear you could pick up, because you could pick up helmets and you could pick up melee weapons, and you were looking for something that was really busted, like a helmet that has a special attack that does like an AoE like flame strike. And so every time you hit the shop after, you're picking up perks that increase the refresh time on your special attack and the damage it deals. You're not really doing that in this because you only have one special attack and you pick it at the start of the game. You can do either like a big hit, like a spinny move, or you can throw a dagger. And each of those only really have like one progression you can pick up at the shop. And I kind of ignore it. But you can pick up the other perks from the random chests. So you don't actually need to be hitting the shopkeep constantly to be like upgrading your character. You'll kind of do that naturally through play.
Okay.
And I can't really say like it hits the roguelike thing of each time I'm like, man, I can't wait to see like what crazy build I get. Oftentimes, if I pick up like a good ranged weapon, I'll stick with that and try not to break it. So really, it's not about the build, it's just about getting good at the game, recognizing which fights you can take up front, what times you need to like weed out the horde, and sort of learning how to whittle down the boss's health using the parry. So like I do recommend it. Like Slay the Minotaur, I think this is worth checking out because I think a lot of people would weirdly get addicted to it the same way I have.
Well, I think that sounds like you've made some pretty good choices.
I did. They are the choicest of choices.
Are you ready for the Variety Minute?
Yeah.
This week's Variety Minute is choices in games. We've done things similar to this, but I think with the Stanley Parable, there's going to be a broader discussion on the meaning of choices in games. I have been on record saying my favorite choice in a game is the Half-Life 2 pick up that can. What I mean by this choice is, and I think with Stanley Parable really shows this, which we'll get into later, is a choice that changes the outcome of a game is not necessarily the most fulfilling choice. I feel like the best choices that you make in a game are ones that reflect you as a player.
Yeah. I think, like, when I think about my favorite choices in games, or just, like, choices that I dwelled on a lot, they were ones that ultimately didn't, like, change the fabric of the universe. It was very basic stuff like, do I want to be mean to this character right now? Or, you know, how do I want my character to go about this particular scenario? I think a lot about, like, people's criticisms of games like Bethesda games, like Skyrim, Fallout 4, where they'll do big essays on how none of the dialogue options actually matter. And to me, it's like, no, they do matter, because sometimes I don't want to, like, do just a generic, like, yes or no. Sometimes I want to have a little character flavor in, like, how I say something, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And, like, on, like, a Telltale level, I think a lot of people were upset by Telltale because your choices are ultimately still dictated by a story. They can't deviate wildly. They can only deviate a little bit. And people got upset by that, but just realistically speaking, and we'll get into it with the Stanley Parable, you don't want a story that doesn't have focus. You want to be on a ride, and maybe you'll make a pit stop or two along the way, and that's fine. It's okay. I think Mass Effect is an example where I think it was bad at reflecting the choices, especially by the end. A good example would be, I think the most pertinent example is in Mass Effect 1 when you kill, or when you let the Galactic Council die, and then they just get replaced by humans.
Yeah. Like, I feel
it's a very dismal way to, like, go about it.
I think that Mass Effect, like, the whole Mass Effect trilogy is sort of this interesting artifact when it comes to discussing choice in games, because it's ultimately like a failed experiment in a lot of ways. Because it is from this time where AAA games were really about, like, branching paths and choices mattering. And Mass Effect comes out and says, we're going to have this full, like 10-year trilogy, and your choices are going to carry over from one game to the next, and it's all going to build to this unique third game that's going to be completely different for every player. And ultimately, that's not the case, because they kind of realize, oh, there's actually no way to account for every single permutation in an interesting way. Mass Effect 2 has a lot of little choices that people don't think about because it's kind of not a choice for the player. Like, you can choose to leave Grunt in his pod. And that's, like, commented on in Mass Effect 3. Like, Grunt is there where he's supposed to show up in Mass Effect 3, and he will comment, like, hey, you never let me out of my pod. But the mission still plays out the same, you know?
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and then you get stuff like the suicide mission, which is like any party member can die. And then in Mass Effect 3, they kind of wrote themselves into a corner and reduced pretty much all of those party members, save the legacy ones, to cameos. Cameos that will get replaced with an equivalent character. And in some cases, I think those equivalent characters are kind of interesting. Like, if you have Moradin die, you're instead... And Moradin's a big character in Mass Effect 3. He's replaced with a character named Paddock Wicks, who is kind of interesting in his own right as sort of like a young, rebellious Solarian, whereas Moradin is this much more veteran, old, kind of set in his ways, trying to make, like, one last good deed before he dies. I just don't think a lot of characters see that, or even, like... I was about to say, like, appreciate the differences, but I think it's a much deeper thing of like, it's difficult to appreciate when so much of it tastes the same between different like branching paths.
Yes. I wanted to highlight two things, and Mass Effect reflects both things. First of all, like you take a Red Dead Redemption or a Grand Theft Auto, especially the later Rockstar titles, and the choices become very it goes into the morality system. I think that's one of the pseudo choice ones we've done before, is morality systems in games. And it's like BioShock is like, do you want to kill children or do you want to be Jesus? And it's like, ugh. But like, I think Red Dead Redemption does it in a decent way, where it's like, do you want to be an asshole or do you want to be a recovering asshole? Like, where it's mostly in the delivery of how it's done. I still feel like there's problems. I feel like the essential problem is in Grand Theft Auto 4, where Nico Bellic in cutscene and in character is a person that wants to get out of the life he's in. But in terms of what the player wants and what the gameplay asks of you, you become a genocidal maniac. So those are where it becomes incongruent. But I also wanted to highlight, I think probably the most essential choice that players can make in a game, especially like when you look at RPGs, and like this even reflects in tabletops, is character creation. I feel like there's a reason why a lot of people make 50,000 characters and give up on them, you know, midway into it, is because that is the ultimate choice the player is making. And the character, especially if he's developed, informs the choices. And then that's not necessarily something that pans out, depending on the story or depending on the player.
Yeah, sometimes you get like class choices, right? And you'll see like people coming out and saying like, I didn't enjoy this game until I played like this particular class, because that changes up the gameplay like so dramatically. And if you play it as like, I don't know, a warrior, the warrior's boring to play. The mage is where it's at, you know?
Yeah. Or in Vampire Masquerade, choosing to be the Nosferatu or the Malkavians. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you can consider those like second playthrough type things, especially like with the Malkavian, where all your dialogue options are written in sort of like a they're like riddles and flights of fancy. And it's hard to tell what the actual plot is, but also your character will just like drop spoilers.
Yes. Like that's definitely like second playthrough shit, or it's something uniquely dynamic to the character. Nosferatu would stick in sewers and is not you can't really be seen in public. So it's a much different, it's a little bit more stealth and combat focused and a little less dialogue focused.
It's always
go ahead.
It's always frustrating to me when games offer these really different choices, but then can't offer the same amount of content for both. You know?
Yeah.
Like, playing as a Nosferatu in Vampire the Masquerade, like, you do get this unique gameplay experience, but you're also missing out on, like, 70% of the game because your character can't, like, access it in the default way.
Absolutely.
I think about something like going back, like Baldur's Gate 3. And I think Baldur's Gate 3 is a really good example of a game that, like, accounts for player choice in ways that feel meaningful. And a big part of that is because it was in early access for so long, and the devs paid attention to what things players were doing, what they were trying to make happen in the story, and they added in that content. Like, a lot of players were like, I kind of want to spare Minthara in the start of the game, because she seems like an interesting character, and the devs were like, okay, we'll make her a party member, you know. But
I was gonna say MSims do this a lot. Deus Ex, there's a lot of scenarios where there's like a scripted event, and you're wondering like, oh, could that person have survived? And the answer is often yes.
Yeah, and in Baldur's Gate 3, one of like the earliest big choices a character can do is, you know, you can either side with the druids or you can side with the goblins. And it's presented as a choice, but siding with the goblins is kind of a shit route. Because it drastically fucks up who's available in Act 2. You kill off a lot of merchants. A lot of party members don't take kindly to you doing that and will leave the party or attack you. And it just doesn't feel as, like, fulfilling or intentional to the story the game is trying to tell.
It's also like a good example also here would be Caesar's Legion in New Vegas, where they are so transparently bad. It's clear that you are, and also the route, this is also a huge giveaway, is as if the route has less clear development time put into it than other routes, where you're like, oh, this NCR route has a lot to it, whereas the Legion route is like, oh, I'm done already, like, and the story, the way it's built, doesn't really necessarily support it. It's cool that you can do it and it works well enough, but you can see that maybe the choice wasn't the most important thing here.
I think sometimes what players appreciate the most is exactly what you just mentioned. It's cool that you can do it. And sometimes knowing that you can do it makes following the default, like, intended path more meaningful.
Oh, and to go back to that, do you know the statistics on Mass Effect's Paragon playthrough versus the Renegade playthroughs?
Yeah,
it's like colossally, like 90% of all playthroughs are Paragon playthroughs.
Because most people recognize that killing off the entire galactic government isn't actually a useful course of action. And what's always been funny about that, and I've brought up before, I started with Mass Effect 2. It was a birthday present. So I played through that game, like, pretty much multiple times in BioWare's default world state, which is a world state where Shepard sacrificed the Council, he killed the Rachni Queen, Rex is dead. Like, it's not full on like the Renegade route, but it's interesting that BioWare was like, we thought more players would pick this, so we've made it the default world state.
Gotcha. That's interesting, and that makes sense, because it's also, like, if you think about it, it is content. It is content people have had to devote time to make and money to make, and if less than 10% of people are experiencing it, then yeah, push it. I don't blame them for that at all, absolutely. Well, I got some other things. There's some other choices that I think are profound. I think, for instance, let's take Pokemon. I feel like making a team, or like, I think the most important thing in Final Fantasy is choosing your classes. Like the original Final Fantasy, you get 4 characters and you alternate the thing, and like the most profound thing you will do is figuring out the classes. Or Pokemon, it's like, do I want Pikachu? Do I want Bulbasaur? Do I want Squirtle? And those are big deals.
I started enjoying Pokemon a whole lot more as an adult when I stopped catching when I stopped trying to fill out the decks. And when I tried to actually create like a specific team. And that allowed me to imprint on like the Pokemon I did pick up, and I would like think about like their little personalities and their narrative arcs and such, and it felt more like an actual JRPG, a party-based JRPG.
Absolutely, that's how I've always played it.
I think getting into like party choices, that's a big thing that a lot of games get mileage out of by giving you like party members that have narrative arcs that you influence. BioWare is another example with Mass Effect and Dragon Age, but we also have companions in Bethesda games. A lot of people have written a lot about, like, the branching paths they do with their New Vegas characters. What is her name? The super mutant that you recruit, the grandma.
Oh, snap. I forget her name off the top. Give me a second. I think it's Lily off the top. It is Lily. Lily.
It is Lily. So she has, like, memories of her old life, but they're painful to her because of how long she's been alive and how, like, that ended. And you can coerce her to take, like, medication that will, it's antidepressants, but it will cause her to forget her children. And that's, like, that's a really meaningful choice. That maybe doesn't, like, affect the end game in any meaningful way. I don't know if it, like, changes up her stat capabilities or anything, but it's just a moment for the player to, like, sit and think, like, if I were really here, what would I do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. I think visual novels are also a big test in this, in which, like, where do the choices reflect? I also feel like in endings, I feel like endings are often an afterthought. It's important when an ending feels real to the player. I feel like what makes, like, Dark Souls good at endings is the fact that they don't mean a lot, but they feel real to you because you made the choice.
Yeah, because it's a game where, like, those are kind of the only choices to make. Yeah. And they're sort of more meaningful because you kind of commit to them well in advance, right?
Yeah.
I never like games where the ending is, like, the ending choice, like, what ending do you want? That's, like, 10 minutes before credits,
Yeah.
And, something.
It should
Mass
be something
Effect 3.
that's been built up over time.
Yes. And I think that's what something like, Casey Hudson was like, Mass Effect 3, the ending's going to be different for every player. And then he walked that back to mean, like, Mass Effect 3 is the ending as a whole, and that's going to be different for every player. But the actual final 5 minutes, that's all going to be the same.
Yeah. It is what it is. Go ahead.
I think there's a other side of this, because we're talking a lot about narrative choice in games, but mechanical choice is also just as interesting,
Absolutely. That's where I meant, like, character creation. And also, like, you look at something outside of RPGs, fighting games, right? Who you pick as a character means a lot.
Yeah, because sometimes there is I think every character I've ever picked in a fighting game was kind of like, do I like playing this character? And B, can I, like, embody this character? Can I be a blank Stan? Can I be a Marissa Stan?
Well,
is that
it helps,
enjoyable
and
to
this
me?
reflects it. Is like what you mean by that is the choices you make in the game, and on, like, a literal physical level, what buttons am I gonna press? Marissa helps. Like, Marissa as a character is suited for those buttons you press. Does that make sense? She reflects that.
Yeah, I get that. Like, you like charge characters because you like playing a defensive play style that's, like, reactive to what your opponent's doing.
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely, like, I don't know. I think mechanical choices also mean a lot to players. And it's a lot harder in, like, generic action games or platformers because there's, like, a standard rhythm to it, right? So it doesn't feel like you're making choices, but it's fine. You know what I mean? I think the other thing when we get into the Stanley Parable is sometimes not having a choice is good.
Yeah. I can get that. Like, when it comes to mechanical choices in games, I do kind of salivate a little when games, like, say, like, there's 100 different ways you can go about completing this quest, or something like that. And, oftentimes that, like, falls apart because, like, there's 100 different ways that you can, but they're all kind of, like, variations on say yes to the thing. It's much more interesting when it's something like a Dishonored, where
or like a Hitman,
or a Hitman, where there are 100 different ways to, like, infiltrate this particular building, and it's all going to build to the same center, but the way you go about it, the path you take, it could be completely different from the way everyone else is playing it. And that feels much more meaningful and reflective, and it also leans into sort of a roleplay aspect with something like Dishonored. If you want to be, like, the sneaky assassin who's only there for your target, you can play that way. If you want to go in guns blazing, you can play that way, and it still feels appropriate to the character.
Well, I mean, there is one other aspect that I think this goes back to characters, but it's slightly different, is romance options, right? I feel like that says a lot. This goes back into reflecting you as a person, and it could be the same outcome. Harvest Moon, it really doesn't fucking matter who you fucking pick, but the one character, I'm married to the doctor. He's really handsome with a mustache. Like it's a little more aspect of customizability that feels like a commitment.
Yeah. It aids to the narrative aspect of the player crafting their own narrative, which is something I've said on this pod a lot, is something I do. I like when games let me feel like I am telling a story. And sometimes the choices you're given don't really mesh with the kind of story you're telling. And that's when you have to do a lot of like, what is the term? You just have to like fill in the blanks for yourself. You know, like, if I'm, the reason why it took me so long to get beyond Act 2 in Baldur's Gate 3 is because I had gone back and made a new character, because I wanted to try out a different play style. And I picked a rogue, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna, like, play this character like they're a former pirate. And is there options in Baldur's Gate 3 to say, "Yar, I'm a pirate"? No, not really, but I'm filling in the blanks in my head, you know?
Yeah. That makes sense. Yep. I would role play different things. Like I would role play James Bond in New Vegas. That one was fun. Or just it's cute to be able to do that. Let me ask you something. I think we're wrapping up here though. RPGs are just the easiest one to do because it embodies so many choices on everything. Stats. When you look at a skill tree, and you're like, oh, yes, I have to put my stat into this branch. Do you feel like these are meaningful?
Yes, but sometimes the game can be a dick about it. Where something like Fallout. Actually, like OG Fallout, and actually Fallout throughout most of the entries. You know, a game about dialogue choices. Charisma's a dump stat, because charisma doesn't actually affect, like, your dialogue choices or even, like speech checks, you know? And sometimes there's, like, the end of Fallout 2, where the final boss with Hannigan is bad. It's a bad boss fight because he has 8 turrets that will rip you apart, and the only way to get through that boss fight and win is to be able to pass the hacking check on the terminal. But if you didn't put any points into hacking, you're SOL, you know? So, you know, it depends on the game. If I'm doing, like, you know, a FromSoft game, I'm thinking about what sort of, like, combat build I want. I've probably already looked up in advance, like, what sort of weapons are in the game, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to target that one and make a build around that. If it's an RPG, specifically one that's, like, promising a lot of different skill checks, I actually do kind of, like, sometimes just play the field and create a very neutral character for first playthrough, just to see, like, what sort of skill checks there even are. And if it's, like, you know, there's 30 strength checks and only 2 intelligence checks, well, next time around, I'm probably not going to put any points into intelligence.
Yeah. All right, Murph, are we ready to talk about the game of the week?
Let's tell the story of a man named Stanley.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk. Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly. Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs, trying to. Stanley had no idea where he was. Stanley looked up and saw the generator. Stanley decided that he would provide. Stanley worked for a company in Stanley Line. Stanley's job felt less and less like his every day, the further from enslavement. And Stanley was happy.
Our game of the week is the Stanley Parable. The Stanley Parable began life as a mod for Half-Life 2 by Davey Redden. Redden found that the games of the 7th-gen console era, particularly BioShock, Metal Gear Solid 3, and Braid, were nearing this event horizon where they became standardized in their storytelling, and that both developers and gamers had stopped asking questions about narrative and player freedom. Self-teaching himself the Source engine, Redden created the Stanley Parable piece by piece until he was contacted by professional modder William Pugh, who offered to collaborate on the mod. This eventually turned into the full release of the Stanley Parable in 2013. The game is meant to be about a man named Stanley, a menial office worker who discovers all of his coworkers missing and a massive mind control facility under his boss's office, but what the game is actually about is the player rebelling against this narrative by exploring alternate paths, all while being chastised by the game's narrator, played by Kevin Brighting. These paths will lead to various endings, some funny, some existential, but all commenting on the player's reactive nature to being offered choice in pursuit of a story and content. With that all said, Brogan, what did you think about the Stanley Parable?
This is one where, first of all, maybe I'm a party pooper. Maybe I don't laugh at jokes very much. So, in terms of writing, I think jokes often feel, at the very least, I don't remember them very well. Especially this time around. It's also context here. My exposure to this game was I played when Stanley Parable came out as a mod for Half-Life 2. I was in my Half-Life 2 downloading mods phase. It was like 2011. I was about to graduate out of high school. I was modding shit. And I was having a lot of fun, and I really identified with that mod. I thought it was really cool and neat. And then when the actual game came out in 2013, in my head, I kind of saw it a little bit like Ultra Deluxe, where it's like, oh, they just added some new endings. Oh, that's neat, whatever. That's not necessarily fair to it. I think the 2013 release, looking at it now, is really, really good. Way, way better. Clearly an evolution. And Ultra Deluxe does interesting things, which we will get into later. If I were to say one thing that is, I think this is an art game, not a product game. This is not one where you buy. I would not put a number to this game. If I were to put a number, it would be too low for what is actually a worthwhile experience. I was gonna say, I think that this is also one of the ones where I wrote down the most notes so I could remember, because otherwise I would forget a lot of this. I said that the game's thesis is probably that game narratives, almost more than any other medium, rely in absolute terms on the designer, the audience, and the fiction within. A painting or a movie can exist even if interpretation falls flat, but a game must be played, the audience must buy the fiction and participate willingly, and the designer has to account for the audience on a deep metaphysical level. And what I mean by that is there were multiple endings in this game where I related to it deeply as a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons, where you have a story, you have an intent, and when you provide a choice, you do have, like, you gave them some wiggle room, but then the player will inevitably spit in the face of that because that's what they want to do. They want to probe the boundaries. And so you're having this dynamic, complicated relationship with the character in the setting, yourself as designer, and then the player. And they're all at odds. And to make a narrative out of that is very difficult. But it is also, they all need each other. If you take one away, it sucks. And a lot of the endings in this explore that.
Yeah, to me, this game is one of those ones where I would call it, like, basically perfect in the sense of I don't know what I would take away from it or add to it that would improve on the final product. You know? Like, and I could see people not enjoying it if they don't find the comedy funny or don't find the, like, revelations particularly insightful. But to me, this game's kind of like Blazing Saddles in a way, where Not just do I find it really funny, but also in, like, its place in what it's parodying. When Blazing Saddles came out, it killed the Western genre because people couldn't take it seriously anymore. It was the parody that revealed the farce, as one film scholar famously called it. To me, Stanley Parable feels like that in a lot of ways, where after I played it, I couldn't take choices in a game seriously, because the entire time I was thinking of how this game called out that, you know, is it really a, like, rebelling against narrative if the developers have called attention to it and just turned your rebellion into more content for the game, you know?
Yeah.
I think that there's just something so stupidly elegant about how the game goes about it, though. Because there's something, like, the game doesn't outright, like, say that this is an exploration of choice and narrative in video games, does it? Instead, you start with the story of a man named Stanley, and then you come to a room where there are 2 doors, and the narrator says, Stanley took the door on his left. And immediately, you, the player, wake up and notice that there's a door on the right. And maybe you just want to go, like, see what happens if you go against the narration. And when you do, you find that there's dialogue accounting for that. And suddenly, you're now thinking of every path you come across in the game as an exploration of, like, branching content, you know? And in a lot of ways, you just kind of notice branching paths. They're not presented to you as a choice. Once you go through the staff room, you know, the narrator says Stanley took the first open door on his left, but you can see the warehouse dead ahead of you. And it's like, well, what if I want to go in there, you know?
Yeah.
And it helps that all of the endings are relatively quick, more or less, so that it's kind of easy to see all 19 endings in the base game. Mileage may vary for Ultra Deluxe, depending on if you can stomach Ultra Deluxe's one joke.
Yeah, there's some, I mean, there's a lot of variations, like small stuff that I did not personally explore. Spoiler alert, I did not do every bucket ending.
No. I don't think you need to.
You know, I'm going to bookmark Ultra Deluxe. We're going to save this for later. But what I like about the base 16 endings is that they all are a little other exploration into another foray into the thing. Like, let's assume you did listen to the narrator every step of the way. At the very end, you get an achievement that says you beat the Stanley Parable. And all you did was listen to the narrator. You just clicked the buttons you clicked. You just walked through the doors he said you need to walk through. And there was no thought to it. And then let's say you did all that up to the final choice of that route, which is turn off the brainwash machine or turn on the brainwash machine, and you turn it on instead. If you turn it on, you will be trapped in the room and you're going to die. The base is going to explode. And the narrator the entire time is making fun of you for how feeble you are. He'll even have the countdown, and then as it gets nearer the end, he'll be like, by the way, I'm going to add like a minute to the time clock just to fuck with you.
Yeah.
And because I think it's funny. And I think both of these, like, every element of it, you're asking yourself you're asking what choices you make and their meaning to you. I think by that point, you're like, okay, fuck it. Let's just go through every single fucking thing. And I got a little overwhelmed in the sense of, is this a choice? Like, is this going to result in an ending? Or am I about to hit a brick wall where I'm like, oh, I gotta turn around. I have to keep doing it this way. You know?
Yeah. Like, the fact that the game accounts for a lot of player action, when you come across something that doesn't, like, have additional dialogue, that can feel, like, frustrating. It can kind of feel like you're peeking behind the scenes. Something like the broom closet. The broom closet's funny. Like, I like that if you stand there long enough, the narrator just, like, starts talking about how you're addicted to drugs and hookers. But there's no actual, like, ending there. you know, even though the game is like mimetic and people will say, oh, I love the broom closet ending. You eventually have to get out of the broom closet and move on. And if you go in there again, the narrator will say like, oh, you're doing this again. And there's no more dialogue there. Once you reach the end of the broom closet content, there's no point ever going back in there.
Yeah.
At the same, like, even the game calls that out with the window ending, which I think is one of the ones that you kind of have to know about, where, because of the game's, like, source engine physics, if you collide with one of the office chairs, you'll be standing on top of it, and you can use that to go out a window. And the narrator will say, at first Stanley thought he was breaking the game, but then he heard the narrator and realized that this was more content. And he praised the designers for having such foresight into player action. And it goes on this
same
long
with the bottom of the base.
Yeah. But the bottom of the base is a shit post, though.
Yeah.
But with the window, he, like, eventually gives you, like, are you impressed that we thought about this? Yes or no? And if you click yes, he says, let's do, like, or no, either or, he says, let's do a thought experiment. Do you think you would have gotten a different answer had you clicked the other option? Like, would that have been a different branching path? And he, like, goes on this long bit, and, like, I guess you'll just have to find out by coming back. And if you come back, it is the same, like, monologue both ways.
Yeah. I think an interesting ending, one of the ones that I was really fascinated by, first of all, was the baby art ending. That not necessarily the art ending, the other one where you don't wait 4 hours with the baby.
Yeah, that's the Nirvana ending, as it's called.
The other one that I think is very fascinating, and this goes back to what I said at the start of this, was the adventure line.
I love it. The adventure line is my favorite ending.
I think that is possibly the best written ending of this game. Because it is both being very meta about it, and it's basically providing a third voice. First of all, I do want to cite that I think what carries this game the most is the vocal performance of the narrator. He's very smug, and it really works. And he does have a little bit of a range, because in these different routes, he will lean into different things. He'll either be menacing or sympathetic to you. And in the Venture line ending, at a certain point in time, he gives up and is like, let me just put a fucking line on the ground so you can follow it. But as you're following it, he's like, well, this isn't a fucking story. Let's get rid of the line or ignore the line. That way we can make our own story. And then it also doesn't make fucking sense.
That is one of my favorite gags, when you decide to ignore the line and you're just walking down a hallway to find your own story. It crashes through the ceiling. And the narrator's like, ignore it. It'll go away on its own.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Kevin Brighting makes this game. And it's shocking that he hasn't done more work, but I think he's just kind of content to rest on his laurels. Like you said, he has a range, and I think that lends itself to... The narrator kind of embodies different sort of roles depending on what ending you're pursuing. And it leans itself towards this game really having no, like, I guess, for lack of better phrasing, no overarching, like, point. There's no, like, ultimate interpretation. Like, oh, this is about characters versus narrators. This is about player versus developer, man versus destiny. Each ending kind of takes its own flavor on that. With the narrator, like, what he can and can't do. Is he in control of the game? Is he in control of the story? Like, sometimes the game functions like a game. Like, you go down a unintended path and it causes things to start to degrade. Or you go towards an undeveloped place that has, like, placeholder textures and stuff. And the narrator will call that out. And when he does that, it feels like a developer. Like you said, it feels like or even like a dungeon master. I am a forever
I think
DM.
I think that ending is very specifically like, if you keep making choices the designer doesn't, if you keep making the choices the designer does not at least account for or want you to do, you will hit a wall where you do not like the content we're making.
Yes.
And I think there is, it explores these and doesn't make a definitive statement on it, which is, I think, important for a lot of art, is to explore, not make definitive statements on. I think what really showcases it is the death ending, where a separate third narrator or second narrator, who's female, she shows up and she's like, you all need to understand that you need each other, and otherwise you will die, and this will all be meaningless, and the game cannot be played. The only thing you can do is restart.
The only meaningful choice you can make is to stop playing the game, which, that to me that rings kind of true. 2 years after the Stanley Parable, we got Undertale. And Undertale also did a lot of accounting for player action and having branching paths and different endings. And I did the neutral ending the first time because I wasn't spoiled on the game. And then I did the pacifist ending, and I never played it again. And a friend of mine was like, well, why didn't you ever do the genocide route? And I was like, because I don't want to, because the game, I want to leave the characters in a nice place. I don't need to see all the content. Not playing is a meaningful choice. Yeah, there's also, you can take the step out of it being about games, because I think it's very deliberate that it's set in an office building and you play just like a salaryman.
And there is an ending based on that where it's Stanley pushes buttons every day for a living. And when you apply games are a waste of time to work life, which one of the endings is about, every choice we make is a waste of time, even in reality. We're all just wasting time.
Mm-hmm. And, I think it's also very deliberate that, under your boss's extravagant office, you find a mind control facility. And the good ending, the ending the narrator's trying to tell you, is the ending where Stanley gets free will and he wanders out into a beautiful landscape. The ending where you get the credits, right? That's the ending I think the most about. Because it is the one with the credits, so it kind of feels like this is the true ending. This is the denouement.
Which one is that? Is that the unplugging the phone? I don't remember which one it is. You
unplug the phone and the game breaks down, and then you are sort of hovering over the door room, and Stanley's not moving, and the narrator is upset about that.
Yeah.
And,
because he needs you.
He needs you, and real credit again to Kevin Brighting. When the narrator is sad, I feel bad. In the Zen ending, where you commit suicide, just to spite him, just to do more content. I feel bad about that. But in the ending with the credits, I think there's real pain in him saying, I need you to, make a choice. I need you to see the narrative. You don't know how important this is to me. And that feels, I think it hits home because I'm a creative. I like to write. I am also a forever DM. And, you put a lot of work into maintaining, the narrative you want to write. But that doesn't mean anything unless you have someone to experience it.
There's a couple other things I want to explore. Let's talk about Valve.
Yeah. We kind of chatted about this.
Yeah, we chatted about this, and I think this is very it was prescient for us to do Portal before this, and I didn't realize, first of all, because I skipped it, I didn't realize the 2013 version on PC has Portal. One of the... Yeah. There's an ending where you go into different games. In one of the games is Portal. I didn't know that. I think this game is exploring a lot and is inextricably tied to Valve's DNA. And that's not necessarily to say, I don't think Valve was very focused on choices. But that being said, I think Valve in that era still represented a certain level of writing and presentation and presented a level of player immersion that Stanley Parable is also trying to explore and break.
Yeah, it is interesting because you're right. Valve games aren't about choices. You said the most meaningful one to you is whether or not you pick up the can. That's in Half-Life 2, but that's not that's not like front and center, like, oh, this game has so many branching paths. That's not on the back of the
No,
box. You can
it
pick
is
up a
2
can.
seconds of nothing. Yes.
Yeah, but I think it bleeds into when you were, like, calling Portal 2 the most Valve game, because it's the one they indulge in on their worst, like, tendencies when it comes to their particular type of cinematic gameplay, where the player is always active in gameplay and never switches to, like, a full motion cutscene. But that means that there's a lot of times where you're just kind of standing around waiting for a character to stop talking so that you can move on. And
yes.
I could see someone who's not enjoying the Stanley Parable feeling that, because there are many instances where the game's, like, the flow isn't tight enough that the player may reach a location before the narrator has stopped talking, and so the narrator just sort of clips over himself, Or
there's
lot
a
of
really
the
good
endings...
example of this is there's one of the endings. It's when you go down the stairs instead of up the stairs to the boss room, and there's a hallway. I often stop in a room to let him finish talking, but that room, the hallway repeats. So that one specific time, it's built to assume the player's walking through the hallway constantly, and then it's like the player looks down at his feet and he doesn't have feet, and then he realizes the hallway's repeating, and then I'm like, I haven't done that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, like, in that way, I do, and maybe not intentional, I read in, maybe he chose to make the game as a Half-Life mod because the source engine was really accessible, but it does kind of feel like an inadvertent, like, dig at Valve at times for that sort of design.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a game where even though there are digs, there's nothing better. You can't get out of the dilemma. See, in my head, I'm wondering. To me, I would have called this game the Stanley Dilemma rather than the Stanley Parable. But I think Parable sounds better as a title.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe the Parable there, I don't know. I feel like this is with love. I feel like this is a game that secretly hates games, but actually deeply secretly loves them. And I think we do see that when we get into the Ultra Deluxe content.
I think that I would never say that the Stanley Parable is like an angry game or even like a critical game. It feels like a magic trick more than anything, where it's like, oh, did you ever think about that? And you don't until it's called attention to. And, and the fact that there's no, like, definitive statement, there's no true end where Davy Redden appears and he's like, this is my thesis statement, because all of the endings have different takes on player agency. Player agency is good. Player agency is bad. Rebelling against the ending is good. Rebelling against the ending is bad. Like, there's just different... The fact that it's built into the gameplay loop, that everything just restarts from the beginning, means that nothing really, like, is core to the game. It can kind of feel like a punch is being pulled, but I don't think the game ever intended to, like, knock you down for the count.
Yeah. Also, when you're talking about the fact that this is commenting on, games of that era, the one thing that I do think is good about Ultra Deluxe is I feel like Ultra Deluxe's thesis is, number one, that games have not really changed that much in 10 years.
Yeah. We've added collectibles and
paid content.
Yeah.
And also remember how good they were 10 years ago? And then also maybe they weren't so good 10 years ago. And I think those are all the statements that need to be made in Ultra Deluxe. I feel like the jokes are actually pretty well performed. The bucket is one thing. I actually think the most impressive part of Ultra Deluxe's content is the Memory Palace / sequel museum.
Yeah. And it's hard to appreciate those, like, fully, because you can't really go back to them without deleting your save. I think the Memory Palace is probably where the idea for the Ultra Deluxe content began, because Stanley Parable is commenting on video games. Ultra Deluxe is commenting on the Stanley Parable, right? And so, like, going into, like, seeing the glowing reviews and the awards, I love the BAFTA for Game of the Year has the Stanley Parable tapered over The Last of Us. That's a very small gag. And then, like, the skip button. The skip button is a good bit. I think it's good that you can only do it once. And then you can just look up all the dialogue the narrator has on YouTube.
Well, I think what's interesting about the skip button, let's take that real quick. What is one other thing that they've done in the past 10 years is they made a lot of ease of life use. There's a lot of skipping cutscenes, a lot of skipping content. And the one thing justifiable here is, yes, every choice just leads to more content, but that's also ultimately why you're experiencing the game. If you skip the narrator talking, you've skipped the game.
Yeah. It's going back to Baldur's Gate 3. There was a clip of a streamer I saw getting passed around where he's playing the game and he reads chat and someone's like, "Oh, I've played the game 3 times and I've never recruited Karlach. I don't want to." And the streamer's just like, "Why are you bragging to me about missing a huge chunk of the game?"
It's wild. Yeah. No. Go ahead.
I mean, I like because it's just everything in Ultra Deluxe is taking a gag to start with and then running it as far into the ground as they can. So with the skip button, it's like the narrator's placed in, like, existential hell where he's waiting for you to reappear, and then the room you're in begins to break down, and eventually it's a ruin. You're in an apocalyptic wasteland and you wander out. And it ends there, because I don't really know where else they could have taken that.
Man.
But the bucket, though.
But the bucket. Let's talk about the bucket. I feel like the bucket is also one of those things that's been... First of all, to me, I absolutely... Looking at the Valve statement, I'm like, this is such a Valve thing to do. It's very companion cube. It's very GNOME coded.
Yeah. Yeah,
but also,
I can definitely see that.
But also the it's the focus on it, and again, it's commenting on Stanley Parable, but it's also commenting on current games. And in current games, it's number one, it's a marketing thing. It's new, it's fresh, it's a bucket, and it's not that impressive at all. But also, like, yeah, you get some new stuff. You get new lines for it. It's a good punchline because of how meaningless it is. I think it wears its welcome in game. Like, actually playing it, you're like, okay, I get it. It is a one-note joke.
To me, there's kind of layers to it. I want to be the fly on the wall when they came up with the bucket, and then when they came up with the idea of every ending in the base game now has a bucket variation. To me, like, the commentary there is like saying, like, oh, it's the Ultra Deluxe version, or in game they call it Stanley Parable 2, and we're gonna add content to Stanley Parable. The issue is that Stanley Parable kind of said everything it needed to. I don't really, but you have to punch up. You have to double the amount of content in the game. So they give you the bucket, and you can do every ending in the game as a bucket variant, which in each one has nothing really to say about player choice or narrative design. Every single one's a shitpost, and I kind of respect that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to, like, okay, so it discussing, number one, bringing Stanley Parable back. At first, he's like, you've ruined a great masterpiece that is the original. Well, maybe if the original wasn't so good, but what if we made a sequel? Wait 1 second. What if we just make... A sequel is ultimately going to be the same fucking game, but different. So bucket. And
Yeah.
and it's neat, and yes, I like it. You get over, your eyes glaze over at a certain point, I guess, is the problem.
I mean, when it's talking about, like, oh, we're going to do a sequel, but actually a sequel, there's nothing we can really do, and it's just going to be the same game again. I was kind of thinking about you talking about Silksong.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this is just it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think games are iterative, and like maybe that's what people want. That's okay. But I also don't think Stanley Parable is that. Right? Stanley Parable's not actually a game. It's an experience. It's a think piece. It's a think piece, and you don't want to think the same thought twice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is the collectibles. I like the collectibles, and the collectible ending is good.
Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite gags is, like, the collectibles don't matter. Well, they kind of matter. Let's look back at all, like, the different places you found them. And there's, like, one inexplicable mauve room. That's one of my favorite gags.
I was like, what the... Even he's like, I don't remember this mauve room at all.
Yeah.
It goes into memories and, like, how valuable that is. It's neat. I like the collectibles. It's cute. This game is cute.
It makes me think of when, like, some games get remasters and they're like, oh, we're gonna up the graphics and add new content, and the content is like achievements and collectibles. That's something just off the top of my head, the Pac-Man World 2 remake is, they're like, oh, you can, your pre-order bonus is you get early access to some of the statues you can display in Pac Village. And it's like, but Pac-Man World 2 isn't a game about displaying statues in Pac Village. You kind of don't really want to spend a lot of time in Pac Village. It's just a starting hub place.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah, so I think there is a commentary on the state of games, and it's like the more they change, the more they stay the same. It's neat. I do think there's some bucket endings that are better than others. Again, the one where it's the tape recorder, but it's a guy wanting to monetize the bucket.
Yeah,
that's a good one. That's a good bucket.
Have you ever seen the Dark Souls Easter egg?
No, which one's that?
It's really hard to do because when you get your one jump you can use in the entire game, if you go in the tape recorder room, there's some boxes you can jump on and get over, and on the other side is a white summoning sign where a character comes out, he does the praise the sun animation, and you get the message praise the jumping.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
I like the jump circle. The jump circle's good.
The jump circle's a good gag, and it's called back to the achievements, which we haven't brought up. The achievements are also just jokes, especially in the original, where it's like, play Stanley Parable all of Tuesday, or don't play it for 10 years, which, ironically enough, is the amount of time it took for Ultra Deluxe to come out. I do say, if someone were to ask me, should I play original or should I play Ultra Deluxe, I would actually recommend original first, not just because I feel like, not just the fact of, like, Ultra Deluxe is commenting on your foreknowledge of the Stanley Parable, but also, I don't think that Firewatch and... what is it? What's the game with the cars and the soccer?
Oh, Rocket League.
Rocket League. I don't think Firewatch and Rocket League have the same legacy tied to them as Minecraft and Portal 1.
That makes sense, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, even at the time when Ultra Deluxe came out, I recognized that it was a Firewatch reference. Because I was like, oh, I wanted to see, like, if any of the endings from the base game had changed. And I always liked the game ending because you just go into Portal and you go into Minecraft, and that's, like, shocking. But in this one, you go into Firewatch instead. I'm like, man, that game did not have the tail on it that I think this dev hoped it would.
Yeah. Yeah, it did not did not age well. Let me ask you, what's the other game these guys have done?
So
The tutorial?
Yeah, well, The Beginner's Guide by Davey Redden. And I think that is a much harder commentary on the relationship between artists and their audience. And then he also put out Wanderstop. That was this year. Okay. William Pugh, who kind of gets, like, swept under the rug, like Henry Selick and, like, with The Nightmare Before Christmas. But he's the actual director of the game. Like, the design of the game is all him. Redden just did the writing for the narrator. Yeah, he did, like, a series of much smaller profile games. Dr. Langeskov, The Tiger and the Terribly Cursed Emerald, like, that came out in 2015. That is kind of in the vein of Stanley Parable, where it's playing with the player's capacity to rebel against the narrative. But here it's about, like, a heist gone wrong. But I think that was done completely outside of having Davey Redden on board. And then he also did the Temple of No, Accounting, and Accounting Plus. I think with, like, William Pugh and Davey Redden, in a way they kind of remind me of the Brothers Miller, where they start out, like, their debut games are these much smaller projects that are just kind of playing with a particular, like, narrative thing they want to do, and video games just happen to be the space that worked best for it. And then they became of the industry. And thankfully, in a lot of ways, both Pugh and Redden haven't, like, tried to be more than just the guys that made the Stanley Parable. That sounds dismissive. I love The Beginner's Guide. But, you know, it's not like they then, like, you know, Xbox isn't coming out on their E3 showing, like, saying, we've acquired Davey Redden, you know?
This is a good game. I would recommend everyone play it at least once.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one of those, like, games to play before you die sort of things. But it's kind of also something you can only play after you've played, like, 50 games prior. You know?
Yes, this requires an intimacy with the medium.
Yeah, I would be interested in a non-gamer's, like, take on it. Maybe, like, you get someone that's really, like, loves to read, checks it out.
Yeah.
But it really is something that only works in the capacity of a game. Because when I was going through the skip button in Ultra Deluxe this time, I did have this, like, vague fantasy of, like, could you adapt this for, like, the stage? And that only came to my mind because when I did state theater competitions in high school, a lot of kids would do, like, they would do the monologue challenges, but they would pick, like, monologues from video games. And I'm like, you know, I think there's probably, like, a monologue in the Stanley Parable someone would want to do. But ultimately, yeah, this only works as a game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Murph, I think we're wrapping up. Do we have anything to promote?
Yeah, you know, we're out and about doing various other things. Didn't you just record something with Brian for Skybox?
Brian's been out of town. He's really bad at scheduling things. I'm going to edit that part out. But that being said, no. I will hopefully record something this week. It will mostly be the Into the Sky boxes where he dives deep into, like, you know, a writer's work or whatever, like an article they've done. So we would be doing it on Hilux, the Hilux thing I've written for the anti-AI stuff.
Yeah, and I also contributed to that anti-AI week we did, where I talked about the Beginner's Guide.
There you go.
But you can also go over to the Twin Geeks, our old stomping grounds. There I put up an article on 10 games I saw at PAX West that really caught my eye. You know, I try to really single out some, like, hidden gems I found, and it's not a list where you're going to see Resident Evil 9, is all I'm saying.
Damn, did you play Resident Evil 9 there?
I did. It was the first game I played. It was alright.
Are you excited for Resident Evil 9?
I am excited for Resident Evil 9 purely on the fact that they're using a character from the spin-offs.
I was going to say, they're going for the sickos. They're going for you.
I do kind of feel like Requiem is the kind of sequel subtitle you give to shit sequels, you know?
Yeah! Yeah, that makes
It's
sense.
Requiem, Bloodlines, and Revelations.
Yeah. Classics. Or Origins.
Yeah. Sometimes you can do Origins and it'd be fun. The Tremors 4 is funny.
There you go.
But, yeah, you can also find us on your podcast feed. If there are episodes of the show you haven't listened to, why? Go in there, give each of them a listen to them again, and then give them a like, unlike them, and like them again. That's probably
Subscribe
good for
to
the
us
algorithm.
on everything on YouTube
Yeah.
as well. Sounds dope. Thanks, Murph. I think we're playing.
I think so.